Bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum. Oh, hello, listeners. Sorry, just getting things sorted here. The wardens recently reached out to me asking for a retraction of last week's message, to which my reply, of course, is freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Amnesty! More seriously, though, I feel that any monolithic authority of villains should really be able to handle a little criticism. But I did cross the line on that one. The wardens haven't been doing the best of jobs, but no one really is in this new world. We still don't have a stable currency. We still don't have a formal government. We still don't have an oversight organization for a monolithic authority of villains that's our only surviving authority of the dying world that we left behind. But we do have a monolithic authority of villains, and for that I am grateful. In today's first message, the Society for Bait British Culture Preservation is making an outreach effort. If any of you at home happen to have a copy of The Liver Birds, Red Dwarf Season 9, or that one episode of Only Fools and Horses where they dress up as Batman and Robin, give them a call. It's our duty to preserve that culture of stiff upper lip and gradual descent into anarchy that was so unique to our world's Great Britain. We could point to the movement for Welsh independence, or the Irish terrorists that killed half of the King's men, but I like to feel that Bait Britain was more than that. It was a nation that stood tall on the world stage, even after the City of London was nearly levelled by Shatterbird. Keep an eye out for any British media, listeners, and if you want to show your support, try throwing a few Britishisms into your everyday speech. Bugger all, cromulent, hove, all and sundry. It's our job to keep the spirit of British Isles alive. In financial news, New Brockton, the city that grew up about the portal between Brockton Bay and Earthgimble, continues its pattern of leading independent cities in employment, trade, and organised crime secretly controlling the government, narrowly beating out the sprawling megalopolis that most everyone else lives in. We all know you're there, Tattletale. We all know you're there. We just can't do anything about it. Well, the heroes can, they just don't. Probably because under the thumb of the Undersiders, Brockton Bay saw considerable economic growth, improvements to their welfare system, and the creation of a giant interdimensional portal that actually saved most of the world's population. A shame that we can't say the same for other villains trying to play warlord, such as Cedar Point's Prancer or the brutal but just Teapot Despot. In celebrity news, Josefina Villiers has reappeared on the acting scene of Earthgimble, despite rumours of her death and the general assumption of her death following Golden Morning. Rumours have been sparked of a revised Alexandria the musical starring Miss Villiers, the third arc reworked as a tragedy showing Alexandria's gradual slide into madness as she succumbs to the machinations of the Simurgh. Killington locals. Our new multi-faith prayer building has recently made a ban against the worship or deification of the Endbringers or Scion. I feel the need to remind you all that the freedom of religious expression is one of our inalienable human rights. At least I think so. I was never too sure on those to start with, and then we had to try and rebuild the world. I'll get back to you on that. But personally, I feel that the nightmarish and unkillable monsters that plagued Earth Bait and the multi-dimensional destroyer of worlds are as valid a choice of a figure of adulation as an immaterial being supposedly responsible for all of Earth's natural disasters. Now, there's an online petition starting for the construction of a second, more tolerant multi-faith prayer building, and I have signed my name upon it. Today's top story, though, 90 dead and the prospect of interdimensional war. But first, Master Stranger Month! We all love Master Stranger Month. Well, you didn't love Master Stranger Month to begin with. You didn't hate it either. It was just there. You barely even noticed it. It noticed you. It was watching. Waiting. Master Stranger Month noticed the way you combed your hair, the way you smiled at it sometimes when it waved at you. Then you started having to pay attention to Master Stranger Month. It was talking to you at work, after all. It was waiting for you outside of work. Was it following you home? There came a day when you confronted Master Stranger Month. You yelled at it to leave you alone, screaming at it while it just frowned at you. Pouted. It was the one with teary eyes while you were just there, angry. The next day, it was waiting for you outside of work again. It had a bouquet with it, and there was something about its smile. Your heart quickened in a way that didn't quite match the butterflies in your stomach, but you walked up to it. You received a kiss on your cheek, a stroke of your hair. It's been a year now since you first met it. You still love Master Stranger Awareness Month, but sometimes when you see yourself in the mirror, you can see tears. And now, our top story. We have the news on last week's riot at the construction site nearest the Gimel Cheat portal. Apologies if I mispronounced that. We've not had nearly as much time to get used to the idea of an Earth cheat as we have an Earth bait or an Earth aleph. Even less time if you are a refugee from another world to the another world that the majority of us come from. For those of you at home, Earth cheat consists of a single theocratic government with a mandatory Abrahamic faith for all of its 12 billion inhabitants. For some reason, there are concerns that they would willingly invade us for our resources, despite the fact that the truth is pretty much the inverse, actually. Most of our building resources used to provide our homes, our job sites, they're all from Earth cheat, as a matter of fact. Or at least most of them. The riot was started last night by builders angry at the loss of their homes, or rather that they weren't going to get homes to begin with. It seems that the building companies weren't willing to provide accommodation to the very people that they were building the houses, those that were building the houses. I'm sorry for being a biased source of news here, but when the general mood of society is left behind and working together, I really feel that you shouldn't neglect your employees. You need to provide for them. Otherwise, nearly 100 people might die in a massed trigger event gone horribly wrong. We assume that it went horribly wrong. I mean, how do we know that this isn't what powers do normally? How does our monolithic authority of villains know that this isn't what the powers wanted us to do? But I'm getting ahead of myself. As more and more capes arrived on the scene to head off a potential riot, a number of the people in the crowd started to trigger, followed by those nearest to them, followed by those nearest to them, and the effect roughly doubling each time. The crowd surrounding those already affected was divided between those trying to escape and those trying to join in the desperate hope that they could acquire powers. Only for the powers to continue to spread even as victims began to flood the scene, catching the next nearest person, and then the next. A man who spread infection throughout the ground, a woman with glowing veins, a woman that leaked oil from her every orifice, or at least all of the orifices in her face. Nobody stopped to check the others. Each wave of the triggers caught the next nearest people, spreading until the power itself burned out, which to me begs an interesting moral question as to whether running away was condemning other people to die. Were you saving yourself at the cost of others? Were the heroes really saving anyone that day? Could they have saved anyone? More than 90 victims, all in all, more than 90 triggers. None of the bodies can be moved. The meat of their brains is fixed in space, the connection between their powers and their brains holding their bodies at the exact spot where they triggered. More than 90 dead, a mixture of citizens from across our Earths. If you haven't seen the images of the bodies yet, search trachea. That's trachea, but spelt like a tree pun on the word trachea would be. It's an entire garden of exotic matter growing from the corpses of those foolish enough to venture too close. Now, the the wardens, had attempted to censor the images being leaked, but the families of a number of those affected had demanded that some be released, which is really great for anyone with a love of scenery like this. I mean, it's beautiful, honestly, in this haunting way, what with the twisted expressions of agony and the way the bodies can never be moved from their resting point. It really conveys this atmosphere of devastation and emptiness. If you're honestly missing the atmosphere of Gold Morning, it's a slice of hell, and it'll be there for years to come now. More importantly than that, though, the riot and the subsequent multi-trigger event has supposedly destroyed our hopes of peaceful resolution of the disagreements with Earth Cheat, which, who am I kidding? When has diplomacy ever worked for us? We spent most of Gold Morning trying to kill each other. Still, I find myself needing to reassure those of you at home that interdimensional war should not be something that you should be worrying about. For one, Earth Gimel was inhabited too, and we stole it from its primitive early human inhabitants and more primitive Brockton Bay inhabitants. It'd be fair game of us to get much the same treatment. Kind of ironic too, really, but two, and that's the number kind, not the superlative, there aren't exactly that many portals between our worlds. It'd be pretty hard for them actually to declare war against a place that we control all access to. Thirdly, we have more capes. Like, a lot more, actually. And stronger ones. The ones that give people nightmares. All the soldiers in the world can put down a few capes, but, and I say this as someone strongly opposed to the Wardens, I have all the confidence in the world that they could save us. Fourthly, there are other worlds. If Earthcheat really wanted resources or inhabitable land, there is another world with only token human settlements out there that they could just make a portal to. There's no shortage of land or resources anymore. Listeners, we are in a world where becoming a hero is the most dangerous and risky decision that you can make. A world where some people seem to think that there is a war coming. And we are in a world where neither of those things really matters compared to important things, like making sure people can ski again. Do you understand how much infrastructure Killington is having to rebuild? Ski lifts, snowplows, salt, grit, ski boots, skis, rental services. Listeners, my name is Theodore Guy, and I say that people are going to be on those slopes no matter how many more apocalypses we go through. Good night. This was a fan production for Parahuman audio community content. Worm, Ward, and the Parahuman series are owned and written by J.C. McCrae. Check out Worm at parahumans.wordpress.com and check out Ward, its sequel, at parahumans.net for the Ward audiobook project, or as I like to call it, the Wardiobook project, and more community content like Cape Rap Battles and badly read Slaughterhouse 9 fanfiction. Consider visiting parahumanaudio.com. Thanks for listening.